A report was received by the police in New York from a janitor who mentioned that there was a strong smell and traces of blood coming from a car parked at a shopping mall. This was one of the most difficult crimes that had occurred in the United States, as hatred and jealousy can lead to the most heinous crimes. The story is full of details and numerous characters, so it's important to focus on the main characters. Ellen and Sarah are the main characters of the story. In 2020, there was a young man named Alex, 22 years old, living in Los Angeles, who regularly spoke with his mother, Ellen, who lived in New York. He would call her every day to check on her. However, on this day, she did not answer his calls, nor did she call him in the morning as usual. It was strange because her phone was very important to Ellen. She used it for work and business matters, so Alex grew worried. When he tried calling her several times with no response, he decided to call his sister Sarah, who also lived in New York. But he discovered that her phone was also off. At that point, Alex's worry grew, and he tried calling both of them on their landline or at their clothing store, but no one answered. Despite the fact that Alex had some issues with his mother and sister, he always made sure they were okay. This time, however, the situation felt different, which made him even more anxious. Alex knew that Ellen and Sarah might act in ways that annoyed him, but he always felt reassured that they were safe. But this time it was different, which made him call their close neighbor, Anne, who was Ellen's best friend. He told her he had been trying to reach his mother and sister all day, but had not heard from them, and asked her to go to the apartment, knock on the door, and if no one answered, to check the store to see if they were there. Anne went to the apartment, knocked several times, but no one responded. She then asked the neighbors, and they confirmed they hadn't seen Ellen or Sarah all day. Anne started sending many messages on WhatsApp to Ellen and Sarah, but none were delivered. As Anne was leaving the apartment, she noticed that Ellen's car was not parked in its usual spot. She wondered if they had gone shopping, even though this rarely happened without Ellen calling her. She called Alex in Los Angeles and informed him of what she had seen. And Alex mentioned that the car was usually there, so it was strange for it not to be. Although this kind of thing happened occasionally, Alex became increasingly worried and then began searching hospitals and inquired about them, but found no trace of them. When she returned and told Alex that they had disappeared completely, Alex officially reported them missing to the authorities. New York law enforcement began the initial investigation, checking the passport records to see if they had left the country, but found they had not. Then they started checking the toll booths between cities to see if they had traveled to another city. They found no trace of the car at any toll gate, leading them to suspect Ellen and Sarah's relatives in Florida, who had some financial disputes with them. However, the investigations confirmed they were not involved. The authorities spoke to Alex to gather more information, and that's when they discovered strange information. Alex had just returned from a sightseeing trip to several countries. Although this information seemed normal, it caught their attention. After 2 days, a report came from a janitor at the shopping mall who informed the police that he had noticed a red car parked there and mentioned that he had observed traces of blood and a foul odor emanating from it. When the police arrived at the scene, they confirmed the presence of blood traces on the car's trunk, and it was evident these traces were old, not fresh. The car had been parked in that spot for a long time. After inspecting the car, the police began to open the trunk, only to discover 2 dismembered bodies of 2 women inside. Upon inspecting the vehicle's contents, they found an ID and residency papers in Ellen's name, which led them to connect the bodies to the missing persons report filed 2 days earlier. They also found all of the money and belongings with the bodies, including their mobile phones, but they were disconnected from chargers, which led the police to believe the crime was not committed for theft. At this point, the police cordoned off the area and prevented anyone from approaching the car, keeping the investigation confidential. They did not issue any press statement at first because the crime was extremely complicated, especially since it occurred on U.S. soil and the victims were American citizens. After finishing the inspection of the car, the bodies were sent to the coroner to determine the cause of death. The coroner's report confirmed that both women had been severely beaten, and the cause of death was strangulation. After they had died, their bodies were dismembered with a cleaver, and it was determined that the death had occurred 2 days before. The police intensified their investigations, reviewing the mall's surveillance footage as well as the cameras around Ellen and Sarah's store. Another team of officers went to Ellen's apartment to search it, but found no traces of blood or evidence of the crime. They began to wonder where the crime had actually occurred, especially since the dismemberment of the bodies was unusual, as there were no signs of blood inside the car. This prompted the police to delve deeper into the investigation. Meanwhile, as the police were conducting their investigation, Anne, Ellen, and Sarah's close neighbor, happened to pass by the shopping mall and noticed the police surrounding the car. She asked people standing nearby about the incident, and they told her that a crime had occurred, though they didn't know the details. She quickly ran back home and called Alex in Los Angeles to inform him of what she had seen. Alex was surprised to hear the news so quickly from Anne, as the details she provided were extremely accurate, and he had not heard anything from the police yet. Once the police verified the information, they confirmed to Alex that his mother and sister were the ones found in the trunk of the car. After the investigation, the police began to question how Anne knew such specific details and why she had called Alex so quickly. The police began questioning Alex about how Anne knew these details, especially since no official statement had been made by the authorities at that time. Alex explained that Anne had told him the information after trying to contact Ellen and Sarah earlier in the day, but was unable to reach them. As the investigation progressed, the authorities began to suspect Anne, as the information she had given was remarkably accurate. The police analyzed Anne's phone calls and messages with Ellen, and found that there were some messages indicating a financial problem between Ellen and Anne. Ellen had lent Anne some money and had asked her to repay it, but Anne had refused, and Ellen had threatened to take legal action against her. After further investigation, it was revealed that Anne had been hiding checks Ellen had lent her. When confronted, Anne initially denied any involvement in the crime, but when faced with the messages between her and Ellen, she admitted to killing Ellen and Sarah. Anne confessed that she had invited Ellen and Sarah to her home under the pretense of giving her the money, asking them to bring the checks with them. When they arrived, they were shocked to find Anne's brother there. What started as a greeting quickly escalated into violence, as they attacked Ellen and Sarah and strangled them. After confirming they were dead, they decided to dispose of the bodies and used a cleaver to dismember them. They then placed the bodies in plastic bags and transported them to a remote location. Anne admitted to everything, stating that after dismembering the bodies, she placed them in the car trunk and parked the vehicle at the shopping mall. The police confirmed that the crime had occurred elsewhere, not inside the car or the store, leading to further developments in the investigation. After Anne's confession, her brother was arrested, though he denied any involvement in the crime. However, further investigation revealed that he had helped her dispose of the bodies. After a long trial, Anne and her brother were sentenced to death. The crime was shocking, especially since the killer was someone who seemed to be Ellen and Sarah's closest friend. In the end, we must be cautious in our relationships and not trust others too easily.